ॐ यो देव सवितास्माकं धियो धर्मादिगोचराः प्रेरयेत्तस्य यद्भर्गः तद्वरेण्यम् उपास्महे। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। ॐ प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। Now we are going to start the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We finished the 4th chapter in the last class, so we are beginning the 5th chapter. The 4th chapter, the topic was Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which is basically the greatness of the ability to renounce the sense of doership on action, the sense of doership and enjoyership. While you are in action also, even when you do that, the action does not bind you. The action or the result of action does not bind a person who is able to understand the knowledge, the true nature of oneself as the non-doer. Even though that person might be in the middle of action, nothing touches the person. So that was the main point in the last chapter. And also he was extolling, or he was emphasizing the power of knowledge as the highest purifier. So all these points were there in the 4th chapter. The concept of yajna, the self-knowledge, was described as jnana yajna, the yajna of knowledge as considered as superior to every other yajna. So these were the analogy. It's comparing the different kinds of yajnas that produce time-bound results, the yajnas based on effort that produce time-bound results, versus knowledge which does not produce the time-bound result but reveals the nature of what is eternal. It reveals the nature of what is eternal, which is the self. That is why the result produced by knowledge is infinite. So it is not a result produced, but it is a result that is already there. So the difference between both was described. And then the importance of the chapter finished with the importance of, in this world there is no purifier equal to knowledge. The one who has in time attained preparedness through Karma Yoga naturally gains this knowledge. So he also connected the result of Karma Yoga. The practice of Karma Yoga is connected to the attainment of knowledge through the process of purification of the mind, Chitta Shuddhi. So by the practice of Karma Yoga, the person attains Chitta Shuddhi and thereby becomes worthy to imbibe the knowledge of the self and be established in the knowledge of the self. And the other points mentioned were the one who has faith, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparah samyatendriya. So the 3 important points is Shraddha and mastery over the sense faculties. These 2 are required along with commitment to the way of life in Karma Yoga. The one who has faith in the Shastra and the words of the teacher, the one who is committed to that knowledge, And one who is a master of one's own senses, having gained the knowledge, one immediately gains absolute peace. Such a person who is having Shraddha and sense mastery gains knowledge. For such a person who gains knowledge, peace is immediate, because the supreme peace is nothing but knowledge itself. The knowledge itself is the supreme peace. So this we saw. And how it is important not to have a mind that is doubting for the sake of doubting. A person who is doubting constantly all the time. Whatever you say, suppose if you do this, you will get that result. If I don't get the result, if you follow Karma Yoga, you will purify your mind. So what about if in the middle, if I forget to follow Karma Yoga? One day if I don't do Karma, if I don't maintain the yogic attitude, one day if I indulge, what will happen to me? How are you so sure that it will? How do you know that this is true? How do you know that by self-knowledge you will attain supreme peace? That means nobody can disturb that person. If nobody can disturb the person and the person is attaining supreme peace, then why that fellow did this, why this fellow did this, why we have to wage the war, then why you are doing this, why that master did that. So whatever you say, a fundamentally doubting person will doubt any possibility. So he says fundamentally not to doubt. The doubting person does not attain anything in this world, forget about anything, gaining anything in the other world, and also forget gaining knowledge. So doubting, an unhealthy doubting mind is not useful. Unhealthy doubt in the mind is to be given up, and the person should have Shraddha regarding the efficacy of Karma Yoga in taking a person towards Jnana, and the efficacy of Jnana to reveal the peace that is the supreme peace, which is one's own true nature. So the doubting person perishes. That was given there. Samshayatma vinashyati. So do not entertain doubt. Instead of entertaining all different kinds of doubts about the self, what if there is no self? This also we discussed. There are these people who say if there is no self. Zen says there is no self, not self. Buddhism is always talking about not self. Vedanta is talking about absolute self, which is true. What if there is no self? Science is also saying that consciousness could be a consequence of the brain circuit gone wrong. So maybe there is no Atma. What if there is no Atma? If all this is only a big conspiracy for 3,000 years or 10,000 years, So these kind of things will not help, because you will never know. This is to be taken in Shraddha, and only when the person experiences one's own true nature without the interference of the mind, after going through the required purification, only then the person will be convinced. Till that time, one cannot be convinced. One has to be convinced only based on Shraddha. So this is, since being a long journey of continuous de-addiction of all the nonsense that we put into our chitta, into our mind, for lives after lives, it is not an easy joke. So even though there may be doubts, it is understandable. Let us entertain the healthy doubts and inquire in keeping with the Shastra. Let the doubt lead to an inquiry that is according to the scriptures and according to the teaching. Let us not inquire in a spirit that is contrary to the teaching. Let us conduct the inquiry according to the line of thinking given by the teaching. And the doubts can be dispelled and the person can arrive at clarity. So that is the recommendation. And then he finishes by saying, so Arjuna, slaying with the sword of knowledge this doubt about the self which is born of ignorance, which is rooted in the mind, get up and take to yoga. The practice of yoga means get up and fight. Now start fighting. Because for him, the karma to be done is fighting in the war. It is to be done with the yogic attitude of not considering oneself as the owner of the action and the result of action, and to consider oneself as the instrument of the Lord, and whatever result comes is the prasadam of the Lord. With that attitude, Arjuna is supposed to fight. Okay. Thus the 4th chapter ended. The 5th chapter begins with an important question. Are you sure you will be able to sit for the 1.5 hours? If you have to, yes. So otherwise, without the explanation, I will read the entire 4th chapter for us to listen, to have a sequence of thinking in the 4th chapter. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Imam vivasvate yogam proktavanaham Vivasvan manave praha manurikshva kave bhravid evam parampara tamimam rajarshayo viduhu sakale naha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. The Lord said, I taught this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. Vivasvan taught this yoga to Manu. Manu taught this to Ikshvaku. Handed down from generation to generation in this way, the kings who were also sages, they knew this yoga. But with the long lapse of time, Arjuna, this yoga has declined in the world. Then the next one. Sa eva ayam maya te dhya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti ragatyam hetaduttamam. Today, the same ancient yoga has been told to you by me because you are my devotee and my friend. This is indeed a profound secret. This was the only place where Lord Krishna presented himself in a personal manner. The rest of the places, it is not Mr. Krishna. It is in the standpoint of being Ishvara. Ishvara, the first teacher. Then Arjuna asked the question. Aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha kathametad vijaniyam tvamadau proktavaniti. Krishna, your birth was not so long ago. You are my cousin because Krishna was Arjuna's cousin. Your birth was not so long ago, but Vivaswan's birth was a long time ago. How am I to know that you told this to Vivaswan in the beginning? And Krishna is answering, Bhagavan Vacha. Here the standpoint shifts again. Now he says Bhagavan is talking. Means what? He is talking from the standpoint of being Ishvara. You can say Krishna as an avatar, you can take. Otherwise, you can take it as a standpoint of Ishvara, who is the all-knowing mind, who is timeless. In that sense, he was always there. So he was there before also. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Bahuni me Vyatitani Janmani Tavacharjuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natum Vetha Parantapa. Many birds have passed for me and for you also, Arjuna. I know them all, whereas you do not know them. Because your mind is under the influence of karma, klesha and vasana and everything, the mind is not able to access the infinite knowledge. It is not able to access knowledge across time. While Ishvara's mind, being free from the effects of karma, it is not limited by the sukshma sarira. Because it is not limited by the subtle body, the mind of Ishvara is across time, in past, present, future, and across all dimensions. It is aware, it can tap any information instantly. So, Ishvara's mind knows everything being Ishvara. So, that is the point here. Ajo api san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam adishthaya sambhavam yatma maya. Even though being the one who is unborn, the one whose knowledge does not decrease, and also being the Lord of all living beings, still wielding my own Maya, the power of Maya, Prakriti, I as though come into being by my own creative power. He is talking about the process of avatar, how the avatar comes down. By projecting my own power of Maya, I incarnate. So he is saying, why should he incarnate? He is saying, whenever there is a decline in the right conduct in dharma and an increase in the wrong living everywhere, I bring myself into being. So what makes the Lord take birth? If you take birth, that means you are subject to karma. So what is the karma which makes the Lord take birth? It is not Lord's karma, but the requirement to establish dharma in the world brings down the Lord. Not suddenly the Lord decides, okay, I should come and protect dharma. When the dharma is down, the people who are following the dharma, they make special prayers. The rishis and the masters and the yogis, they make special prayers to the Lord to to restore dharma. Because there are prayers for restoring dharma, that attracts the avatar. And because that prayer is a karma, that karma brings down the avatar. So depending upon the prayer, the nature of the avatar changes. There are avatars which are only temporary, like Lord Narasimha. He just came out of the pillar, killed the demon and went back. That's all. This was one avatar. Lord Dakshinamurti, he came, he only sat under the tree, taught the 4 sages, and his avatar is over. He did not do anything else. And but if you take Kali was an avatar. Goddess Kali came and she destroyed one demon called Raktabija, and then she is absorbed back into the unmanifest. But Lord Krishna came, took birth, he hung down for more than around 80 years, 100 years, and then after that, he left the body. The whole Mahabharata, he was there. Lord Rama, he also took birth and he married and he went to the forest to suffer, to rule the kingdom, and he had 2 boys. All the whole story of Lord Rama, he was there. So there, depending on the requirement of the avatar, the purpose of the avatar, the nature of the avatar will be determined. So it is not personal karma of the Lord. If it is the same Lord taking all the avatar, that means you will be thinking of what all karma Lord has. It's not like this. So since the prayers for a particular purpose, avatar is a special creation which comes by the power of the Lord's Maya directly. Because of the Maya Upadhi and not based on Avidya, the avatar, being an avatar also, he still retains the omniscience of the Lord. So that is the idea here. And why does he come? To restore Dharma. Then what all does he do? He takes avatar for the protection of those who are committed to Dharma and the destruction of those who follow Dharma, and for establishment of Dharma I come into being in every yuga. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuga is a very, very famous statement of Bhagavad Gita. It comes in the 4th chapter that we saw. The 4th chapter began by telling the greatness of this yoga, Karma Yoga. This is why I taught all the kings and everything. He was telling the Guru Parampara. This Karma Yoga is not the new concoction of Mr. Krishna. It is a Sampradaya Jnana. So we know that if the teacher does not belong to a Sampradaya, that person cannot be considered as a teacher. Sampradaya Murkavata Apekshaniya. So this is the traditional dictum concerning spiritual teaching. The spiritual teacher must belong to a Sampradaya, a tradition. The teaching must be in keeping with the tradition. If the teaching is not in keeping with the Vedic tradition, then the teacher, that person cannot be considered as a teacher, even though the person may be supremely wise, with a lot of knowledge, with well learned in the scriptures, excellent diction and all that. The person is to be considered like a fool and rejected for the purpose of teaching. So that is why the Lord also is consistent. The whole scripture is consistent. Even though it is Lord as avatar, he has to teach only what the tradition taught. So he says, I taught before, I was the one who taught before, I am the one who started the whole tradition, I am the one who sustains the tradition. Now also I am teaching something which is the knowledge of the tradition only, which is nothing new. I am teaching this yoga which was taught before. It was lost, so it was not available. Now I am reviving it and teaching you again. And it is nothing but the essence of all the Upanishads and all the Veda. So he says this. And this is the main, he introduces the Guru Parampara of the Karma Yoga and the teaching. And then he talks about the greatness of the yoga, and then how and brings the concept of avatar, and after that he is now going to the main topic. Jnana karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanmana iti mam yeti. So Arjuna, so what is the greatness of this yoga? The one who knows in reality my divine birth and action in this way, Arjuna, giving up the body, that person is not born again, he attains me. The one who knows my nature in this way attains me, means what? Just by knowing Krishna is the avatar, will you attain eternity and reach oneness with Ishvara? No. Which means you have to understand the nature of Ishvara. That is what it means. Understanding the nature of Ishvara means, what is the nature of Ishvara? Even though all the creation, even though he comes into being through the power of Maya, he is not affected by the Maya. That means action does not affect the self. The action does not affect the self is something that Ishvara demonstrates practically. That all the time Ishvara is busy, but nothing touches him. So knowing Ishvara in this way, knowing the divine birth of the Lord means knowing the nature of Satyam and Mithya. That's what it means. Brahman and Maya and the connection between that and the world and everything. So when you know exactly what is the nature of Ishvara, you will have to know your own nature also. So that person does not come back. Free from craving, fear and anger, Vitaraga Bhay Krodha, Manmayama Upashrita, Bahavo Jnana Tapasa, Puta Madbhavam Agataha, Puta Madbhavam Agataha. Free from craving, fear, anger, totally resolved in me, taking refuge in me, purified by the discipline of knowledge, many have come back to my nature. Totally resolved in me, taking refuge in me. Means here taking refuge is Karma Yoga. Totally resolved means resolving the ego in Ishvara. Seeing the individuality as part and parcel of the totality and understanding the oneness between the consciousness in me and the consciousness in Ishvara is one. This understanding. So purified by the Jnana Tapasa Puta Madbhavam Agata. Purified by the discipline of knowledge, which means by being committed to the knowledge of the self, the person comes back to my nature. Means what? The person goes back to one's own nature. The nature of Ishvara and your own nature are not two different things. You in your fundamental nature and Ishvara in its fundamental nature, both are same. So you are Ishvara actually. So realizing that you come back to the true nature of yourself, which happens to be Ishvara. Then the next one. Ye yatha Mam prapadhyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartaman vartante manushyaha partha sarvashaha. Those who worship me in whatever way, I bless them in the same way. If this is the case, then why do you teach this only to me? Why this yoga is not available for everybody? Why everybody is not getting liberated? Why only the person who worships him get liberated? Why only the person who seeks to know Ishvara, only that person gets liberated? Why not everybody? This question will arise that God is partial. No. So he is explained. Whoever worships me in whatever way, I bless them in the same way. If you remember, it comes in the previous chapter. They are all in me, but I am not in them. Mastani sarva bhutani, nachamastani bhutani. I am not in any of them, but they are all in me. Pot is in clay, clay is not in pot. The same thing. So Ishvara does not have the sense of doership. The Ishvara does not have likes and dislikes, personal preferences. So how I invoke Ishvara, Ishvara will act based on that. It's like it is just pure intelligence which does not have a personality, but which is capable of taking any personality. So Ishvara is absolute intelligence, which is the source of everything. Which can be invoked. That intelligence called Ishvara can be invoked. That is why we use the word that. We don't even say, no, when we abstract, when we understand God in abstraction, we don't say He. We say Tat, that. So Tattvamasi, when you are that, when you say you are Ishvara. Tat Pada, that there the word Tat means that, which means Ishvara. So Ishvara, the God is called as that, not as it, him or her. So that can be invoked as a her, as a him, as a combination of him and her. There is a form of the Lord called Dakshina, the Ardhanarishvara. Half woman, half man. The left part is woman, right part is man. It's a manifestation of Lord Shiva. So if you read 1,000 names of Lalita, the last name comes Shri Shiva, Shiva Shakti Aikya Rupini, Lalitambika, Shiva Shakti Aikya Rupini. She is one, Shiva and Shakti rolled into one. So there are different ways of invoking. And you have not a human form, you have only a symbol, you have a lamp, flame. Lord is invoked as light. Tat Savitarvarehenyam Bargho Devasya Dhimahi. That supreme light which illumines all the three worlds. I invoke and meditate on that light. May it illumine my intellect, that is Ishvara. Gayatri involves Ishvara. and you invoke a Shiva Linga, you know that the indicator of God. So Linga, you heard about Linga, Shiva Linga? Shiva Linga does not mean phallus. This is one nonsensical translation from the Western so-called scholars. Okay, so they all translate the phallic symbol of Lord Shiva. Shiva Linga does not mean phallus. Linga means indicator. So now this is a Linga of Indianness. Now I have this dot. So wherever I go, anybody will know that I am an Indian because only Indians put this dot. Or they will think that I am a Hindu. It's a Linga of a Hindu. Suppose if I have a white U kind of shape with a red one in the middle, it means I am a Vaishnava. If I have 3 lines like this, it means I am a Shaiva. So you have all this. And you have a Linga. Linga is also an indicator. You have these traffic signs. You have that, you have an arrow like this, and then there is a cross, which means it is a one way. You cannot go, this way is blocked, you cannot go. It is a Linga. It's a Linga of a one way. So Shiva Linga means it is an indicator of the nature of Shiva. It's an indicator of the nature of Shiva. The bottom signifies the feminine principle or the material cause. The top signifies the intelligent cause, the creativity, the creative intelligence. So it is a combination of intelligent and material cause. Abhinna nimitta upadana karanam. Inseparable material and intelligent cause of the universe. It is like flubber. You know the flubber, it's in the movie Flubber. The flubber becomes or takes all kinds of shapes by itself. And then the flubber takes a shape. You know, it's like a clay that can become a pot by itself. Something like this. You know, so the Ishvara, don't say no, Ishvara is clay. Okay? Ishvara is intelligent existence which is limitless. And in that Ishvara can appear any number of shapes, any number of things, any number of appearances, any number of sounds, any number of worlds and universes and galaxies. And there may not appear anything, still Ishvara is. So, to understanding the so he says, whoever worships me in whatever way, I bless them in the same way. People follow my path in on. So, no matter what you worship, you are fundamentally worshipping Ishvara only. This is also a very often quoted verse from Bhagavad Gita, which is the source of the all-embracing attitude of Hinduism. Hinduism has an all-embracing attitude. One of the reasons is slokas like this. It says, no? Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartman vartante manushyaha partha sarvaja. So if you bring Christianity to India, they will say that is also Ishvara. Jesus is also okay, Allah is also okay, anything is okay. Only the Hindu will tell this in the whole world. Why? Because we are taught that no matter what people worship, any form people worship, they all worship the same Ishvara. That's why 33 million gods all mean the same God. So there is no problem. So anybody can worship, and we can also worship each other. When we say Namaste, means I recognize Ishvara in you. When I say Namaste, I recognize Ishvara in you. So this flexibility with respect to relating to Ishvara comes from the understanding of the nature of Ishvara. So this is one of the slokas that indicate that. And then after that he is coming to the next one. Desiring the results of action here. Now he is talking about those people who invoke Ishvara for personal benefit, which is low level spirituality. Spiritual materialism, let us call it. Okay, it's in our words we can call it spiritual materialism. Spirituality for getting things done. Okay. So desiring the result of actions here in this world, they worship different deities. I want rain, so I invoke Lord Varuna, give offerings and all that, and then there is rain. I want a lot of money, so I invoke Lakshmi, do a special Lakshmi puja, and with a lot of mantra, purasarana, I do some charity, and I invoke a special grace of Lakshmi. So whatever I touch, it yields me wealth. It's a siddhi, it's a power. So it can be done. It's basically a sophisticated form of voodoo. Okay, it's a magic. So this is, you can call it as magic. In the sense, it is a ritualistically manifest, means harnessing the divine powers for getting things done. So that is called this Kamya Karma. कांक्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा. For in this world, the result born of action comes very quickly. Why the action comes, result of action very quickly in this human world? Because the lifespan is very short. When compared to the lifespan in heaven and in other lokas, the lifespan in the human realm is very short. So you invoke something to get a result, the result comes very fast. Also suppose to attain some position after death, if you do certain specific rituals, you are going to die in let us say 80-90 years, and after that you attain the result. Suppose if you do something in the heaven, in a heavenly realm, something to attain, you have to wait 1,000,000 years. Because your lifespan has to end. That loka will go on for 1,000,000 years, so the result is not fast. So the results are attained very quickly. So people invoke different deities. They worship other deities other than me. Means what? They invoke limited manifestations without the knowledge of Ishvara, without the knowledge of the all-pervading, the one supreme being. Without that knowledge, they invoke it as a person like you and me. You call a friend to get something done. You invoke a devata, think it is this devata does this work, that devata does this work. So you invoke Ishvara as a devata. But in worshipping Ishvara, we worship a devata as Ishvara. So there are two things. One is our spiritual voodoo, magic, where you kamya karma, where you are invoking a divinity to get things done, where you forget the Ishvara nature. You forget about Ishvara. You are only invoking a divine power and getting things done. So you are relating to something that is limited. That is why he means other deities. Means there is nothing other than Ishvara. Something of the nature other than Ishvara. Something that is not Ishvara. When I invoke as a deity only, the deity behaves as a deity. But there is a deity. I can invoke Ishvara in the deity. For example, when you say Ganesha, there is a place in the commentary, in the Shankara Bhasham, there is a place where Shankaracharya says, do not worship other, you should not, there are people who worship other deities and get deluded. Other deities like Ganesha, like Vinayaka, he is an example, like lower deity. That means people worship Vinayaka as a deity to remove obstacles. But then there is another place. In Ganapati, in Atharvana Veda, there is a place where Lord Ganesha is invoked as Ishvara. Tvameva pratyaksham tattvamasi, tvameva kevalam kartasi, tvameva kevalam dhartasi, tvameva kevalam mahatasi. You are the creator, you are the sustainer, you are the destroyer. Tvameva sarvam kalvidam brahmasi. You are the Brahman which is everything. You are always present as myself. Like that also can be invoked. So this can be invoked with every deity. Indra, the king of gods, can be invoked as Ishvara. Lord Sun, Surya can be invoked as Ishvara. Surya can also be invoked as a Devata. So if you go to Indian temples, there is a place where the 9 planets are kept. In the temple, they will worship the main deity. And then when they are circumambulating, going around the temple, there is a place where the 9 planets are there. And Sun is there. So they will go around that 9 times. It is like a ritual to remove the bad effects of planets in your astrology. So in specific days, they will do specific rituals invoking each planet so that their astrological defects get nullified. This is one practice there. Okay. So now, Surya, a Brahmin, when he does Gayatri Japam, when he does the Japa of Gayatri Mantra, he invokes Sun as Ishvara. But the same person, when he goes to do a ritual for nullifying a planetary defect, he invokes the same Sun as a Devata. So that's what he is talking about here. Like I told, no? Self and not self. How do we understand? There is nothing other than the self. But how do you understand qualitatively? Though the wave is not other than the ocean, when you focus on the waveness, you are focusing on the quality. It is qualitatively another thing. Satya and Mithya in the same way. Desiring the results of action here, they worship different deities. in the human world, result of action comes very quickly. The fourfold grouping of people, a division based on the duties and qualities, was created by him. So why he is talking all this is he is giving the introduction to the nature of karma. If I don't understand karma, how will I perform karma yoga? So unless I understand action in the background of Ishvara, unless I understand action, result of action against the backdrop of the cosmic reality, I have to understand what is action, what is appropriate action, what is inappropriate action, what are the results of action, how am I affected by the results of action. All these I have to understand. I can understand only when I understand against the big picture. So Ishvara is the big picture in whose background I understand everything in its place. So I understand the supreme order in which the life functions. So when I understand that, I don't complain when I have to do what is right. I don't get into funny arguments like you are higher than me, I am lower, the world is partial, life has no justice. All this kind of skewed thinking I will not have if I understand Ishvara. A person who understands Ishvara will never complain. Will never complain in a sense, will never feel life is unfair to me. A person who understands what is Ishvara will never feel life is unfair to me. When you feel life is unfair on you, it's because you have not understood Ishvara. And you have not understood the nature of karma. So to understand the nature of karma, Ishvara was told. And the nature of Ishvara, the knowledge of Ishvara liberating a person is indicated. And then he comes into the difference between worshipping Ishvara and worshipping the other deities. And now he comes to the nature of karma and how karma need not affect a person. So he is telling now the nature of karma tells you the karma belongs to, karma means action, result of action. It belongs to the mind and body. Karma does not belong to the consciousness, the self. Karma does not belong to you in your true nature. You are not affected by karma. What is affected by karma is the body and the mind. According to the nature of the body and the mind, according to the qualities of the body and the mind, the nature of work meant for each person is different. There are people who are devoted to intellectual work. There are people who are devoted to protection and administrative work. There are people who are devoted to wealth creation and economics and business. There are people who are devoted to physical work. So depending on the nature of the mind and body, guna and the actions, there are different kinds of people. And because there are different kinds of people, there are different kinds of dharmas for each class of people. Okay? That is what he is coming, where he is explaining the Varna system. We had an entire class only discussing the Varna system. If you remember, it is there in the YouTube for those who have not seen. The fourfold grouping of people. Chaturvarnam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagasaha tasya kartamapi mam vidhi akartaram avyayam. See, I am the one who has created and segregated the people according to the four classes. The four varnas, the four types of categorization. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. What is popularly misrepresented as the caste system of India. Okay. And even though I created, know me to be the one who has done nothing. Even though I am its author, know me to be the non-doer, ever changeless. I say that I did this, I only created all that, but I did not do anything. He is now slowly taking to the freedom from action through knowledge. That is the topic of the chapter. So he is introducing the possibility of freedom from action through knowledge. While Arjuna was complaining for waging the war, he is always thinking whatever he does affects him. Now he is introducing, see, you don't need to renounce. If you really have the knowledge, you will see that you are not affected by the action. So he is introducing that. So he says, even though I am the doer, I did all this, I am the author of all this, understand me to be the non-doer, ever changeless. Now he is saying, Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phale spruha, iti mam yo abhijanati, karma bir na badhyate. Actions do not affect me. There is no longing with reference to the result of action for me. The one who knows me clearly in this way is not bound by actions. By reading this every day in the morning and evening, you will burn your karma. So don't get into all this kind of imagination. It doesn't mean that. It means it is not some special quality of the Lord that makes him free from karma. It is a certain law of existence. It is a certain law of existence. If you understand how it works, it's like physics. Even the Lord throws a ball, it will come down, because even the Lord's ball has to obey the gravity, because gravity is his law. Okay? So similarly, the nature of consciousness and the nature of the mind and body is different. So he says, actions do not affect me. Two things. Actions do not affect me. I am not having any longing or desire with respect to the result of action. I am not very keen on getting any specific result. I don't have longing with reference to the result of action. The one who knows me clearly in this way is not bound by actions. Means, when you know what is the nature of Ishvara as the non-doer, when you understand the truth behind Ishvara, when somebody knows me in this way, means the person has to know oneself in this way. That's what it means. The one who knows me in this way is not bound by action, because the purpose is not being bound by actions. How you are not bound by actions? By understanding how the action and result of action, how they do not affect the self. This understanding makes the person free from the bondage of actions. Then, evam jnatva kritam karma purvaiyapi mokshubhihi kuru karma eva tasmat tvam purvaihi purvataram kritam. Knowing me in this manner, even the seekers of the ancient times performed action. Therefore, perform action indeed, as even it was done by those who came before in the ancient past. Do as those great seers did. Means, by study and reflection and by understanding the principle of Karma Yoga, may you do in the same way as they did. Like, follow the example of those exemplary people who did action without getting sucked into the patterns of action and result of action. Without doership and without enjoyership, they all did action. May you also do. That means, may you understand the knowledge in keeping with the tradition. So that is indicated here. Kim karma kima karme iti kavayorapyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshyami yajñatva mokshase ashubha. Even the seers, the great scholars and seers, they are confused with reference to what is action and what is actionlessness. I shall tell you about action, knowing which you will be released from what is inauspicious. Means, you will be released from samsara, from the bondage of becoming. You will be released from the cycle of birth and death. Then the next one. That is why he said, Kim karma kima karmeti kavyopyatra mohita. Even the learned people are confused with respect to what is action, what is actionlessness. It is not easy. You may think that what is the big deal? Action means to do something. Actionlessness means to simply sit and not do anything. It's not like that. It is something else. So he is saying, don't take it as a literal meaning of the word. When I say action, when I say actionlessness, it points to something else. It is not physically not doing anything. It is something else. It is about understanding the non-doing nature of oneself, in spite of actions being there in the mind and body. So he is pointing out to another quality. He is pointing out to some understanding which is different from the common knowledge. So it has to be taught. Then, next one. Action enjoined by the scriptures is to be known. Forbidden action and actionlessness must also be known. This is because the nature of action is difficult to understand. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. It means one has to devote the mind to clearly understand what it means. Bodhavyam, it has to be taught. One has to be taught. One has to learn it. How to learn it? According to the teachings of the Shastra and according to the teaching as it is expounded by the traditional teacher. Like how Lord Krishna is doing for Arjuna in this context. So, there are three things talked about here. Right action, forbidden action, and freedom from action, actionlessness. All these have to be done. Because the nature of action is very difficult to understand. It is not such a simple thing. You may think, don't come to simplistic, childish conclusions about action. It is a very profound thing here, and it is a great secret that I am revealing to you. So be attentive and don't take it with your conventional, casual understanding. Try to understand the subtle truth behind it. That's what he said. That is why, even after explaining so much, you will see in the next chapter he will say, because he's been asking again and again, if you say that sannyasa is so great, it will give me liberation, then why are you forcing me to act? He thought sannyasa and karma yoga give different results. No, they are two different things. They are two different things, but the result is the same. Again he is asking, after explaining everything, he will ask in the next chapter, tell me which is better for me, sannyasa or karma yoga. Tell me, I will choose one. Choose one for me. You are confusing me. You are telling this will also give moksha, that will also give moksha. Please tell me one thing for sure. So it's very difficult. Even in spite of telling so much, Arjuna is still scratching his head in the next chapter. You know, because it is a subtle principle. It is not something to be understood like your normal everyday things. It is not a simplistic understanding. So may you apply subtle understanding to understand this. And the next one, the one who sees, then comes the most difficult, for which Sri Shankaracharya has written a huge commentary. The one who sees actionlessness in action and action in actionlessness is wise among human beings. That person is a yogin who has done everything that is to be done. Karmanyakarmaya pashyet akarmani cha karmayaha sa buddhiman manushyeshu sa yuktaha krishna karma krite. He has done all that needs to be done. So, the one who sees actionlessness in action and action in actionlessness. The one who sees, in spite of doing a lot of things, he sees that it is the mind and body that is acting. It is the qualities, the gunas that are acting on gunas. The prakriti is acting on prakriti. I don't do anything. The consciousness, I am changeless, I am actionless, I am always there as the witnessing presence, I do nothing. So this understanding is actionlessness in the middle of action. And the one who sees action in actionlessness, I am simply sitting, I am not doing anything. It is not actionlessness because when you are simply sitting while you are not supposed, when you are supposed to do something, you are not doing that and simply sitting. It gives what is called as pratyavaha dosham, and also it is amounts as action because you consider yourself to be the one who is not doing. So you are neither doing nor not doing. The state, because I define myself as the non-doer based on the inactive state of the body. Because the body is inactive or the mind is inactive, I say I am not doing anything. Which is again amounts to the same thing as action because it is also binding. Why is it binding? Because it is based on the false knowledge of defining oneself based on the conditions of the body and mind. Then one gets attached to not doing anything physically. Getting attached to not doing anything physically, a state of the body and mind, makes you a person who is bound by desire. If you are bound by desire, you are caught in the cycle of karma. So it also has its result. That is why a person who is not doing anything, when a lot of things are waiting to be done, feels guilty. So not doing anything produces guilt. Why? because you consider yourself as the non-doer based on the state of the mind and body. But if you are considering yourself as a non-doer because the body and mind is silent, you will have a problem doing anything because the action has its consequence. You feel bound by the action and the result of action. So it is as binding as action. So the one who sees action in actionlessness, which means the one who sees simply sitting, the physical or mental actionlessness alone is not actionlessness. It is as good as action. So that is what it means here. Then yasya sarve samarambhaha kamasankalpa varjitaha jnana vidagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddhaha. Tamahu panditam buddhaha. The one for whom all undertakings are free from binding desire and will, whose actions are burnt by the fire of knowledge, the sages call that person as a wise person. The next one. Tyaktva karma phalasangam nityatrupto nirashrayah karmanyabhi pravrittopi naiva kinchit karodi saha. Giving up deep attachment to the results of action, always contented, being not dependent upon anything, that person does not do anything even though fully engaged in action. So, action by itself is not binding. My attitude, what I have while I am engaged in action, the attitude with which a person does action decides whether the action is going to be binding or not. So, if I am not considering, I am not having any special attachment to the result of action, I am fundamentally coming from a platform of contentment because I realize the fullness of my true nature, and not being dependent, psychologically dependent upon anything, that person does not do anything even though fully engaged in action. Means the result of action does not bind him, so he is not caught by the action and result of action, the cycle of karma. The person who is free from expectation, whose body, mind and senses have been mastered, who has given up all possessions, doing only action that sustains the body, does not incur any sin. In the sense, he does not incur any sin of omission. So he is describing the sannyasi, the renunciant. Then the one who is happy with whatever comes by chance, the one who is unaffected by the opposites, free from jealousy and even-minded with reference to success and failure, is not bound even though performing action. The karma of the person who is free from attachment, who is liberated, whose mind is rooted in self-knowledge, who performs for the sake of daily yajna, that person's karma resolves totally. So when you do action with the knowledge of the self, when you are rooted in the self-knowledge, when you know what you are, backed by self-knowledge, if your action is done only in the spirit of yajna because it has to be done, when you do like that, such an action does not only does not bind the person's karma resolves totally. Means over a period of time, all the person's karma gets exhausted. He does not accumulate new karma. So the attitude behind action, the state of understanding behind action, my relationship with the action and the result of action, that decides whether the action is binding. So don't consider that you are going to be bound because you are doing something. You are not going to be bound simply because you are doing that. You are bound because of the binding attitude with which you do whatever you are doing. So that is the teaching. Then the next one. The means of, then he is saying how it is possible, how the person's karma resolves totally, how is to be done. The explanation. Brahmarpanam brahmahavihi brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaivatena gantavyam brahmakarma samadhina. The means of offering is Brahman, the oblation is Brahman, offered by Brahman into the fire which is Brahman. Brahman indeed is to be reached by him who sees everything as Brahman. So this we explained very detailed, if you remember. Karma yogins perform only rituals that invoke the deities, while others, the sannyasis, offer themselves by themselves into the fire of Brahman. Devameva pare yajnam yoginaha paryupasate. Brahmagnava pare yajnam yajne naivopajukpati. So the karma, he is now distinguishing the nature of the difference in the nature of yajna between the karma yogis and the sannyasis. Karma yogis invoke a devata, they relate to Ishvara, they do the yajnas with the spirit of offering to Ishvara, because a karma yogi has a sense of doership. Because the sense of doership is there, that person invokes the Ishvara. Whenever we are living an active life, if you consider the karma yogi to be an enlightened person, then Ishvara is to be invoked for the purpose of active yajna. So the karma yogi's main relationship is Ishvara. Through Ishvara he resolves, through the knowledge of Ishvara he resolves all the karma. But a sannyasi offer themselves by themselves into the fire of the knowledge of Brahman. The sannyasi is not doing anything. That's what it means. The sannyasi need not do any yajna. Because the knowledge of oneself as Brahman is there, there is nothing other than the self towards which yajna needs to be done. Because there is nothing other than oneself, yajna is different. It's not an yajna like how a karma yogi does. Because there is no duality. If you want to say that, like what the sannyasis are doing, they are offering themselves by themselves into themselves by the fire of knowledge. It's a way of saying. That means they are not doing anything. There is no sense of doership. That's what it means. That means they see only Brahman. They are rooted in the knowledge of everything as Brahman and oneself as Brahman. Next one. Shrotradi indriyanyanye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananya indriyagnishu juhvati. Now he is describing the different kinds of yajna and differentiating the active yajna from the yajna with effort from the yajna of knowledge. Okay. So that is the next verses to talk about that. Others offer the organs of hearing, and others the senses into the fire of self-mastery. Others offer sound and the other sense objects into the fire of the senses. Is basically sense control and mind control. Then others offer all the activities of the senses and the organs of action into the fire of self-mastery lighted by knowledge. Then so too there are those who share their wealth, those who follow prayerful discipline, those who practice yoga, those of firm vows and efforts who pursue recitation of their own Veda and self-knowledge. So he is talking about different kinds of yajna. So lot of spiritual practices here we can understand under these categories. So this helps us to understand that whatever that is based on effort, so all the meditations and everything that we do comes under karma. Physical karma, mental karma. So meditation is nothing but mental action. Meditation is not knowledge. Taking the mind to a certain state where you experience a state of mind is not enlightenment. Because enlightenment is only an understanding, and any state of mind is not the absolute freedom. No matter how elevated the state of mind, no matter how tough and sophisticated spiritual practices you do, as long as you do, it is an effort-based yajna. If you are doing it as a yajna, it is useful, it helps you to become free. But if you are not doing it with the spirit of yajna, you get stuck into it, no matter what is the action. So, to understand what are all the different kinds of effort-based practices and how jnana is different, all this discussion is required. We did a very elaborate discussion of all this. So to others who are committed to the practice of pranayama, stop the flow of inhalation and exhalation, offer the outgoing breath to the incoming breath to the outgoing breath. So the model of yajna, using the model of yajna, the Lord is describing the nature of different disciplines. So that is the topic here. he talks now about those who are regulating the food intake. Others who regulate their food intake offer their desire to eat into the digestive fires. All these people who observe religious disciplines without exception become those for whom the impurities of the mind have been destroyed by the yajna. So he is telling all active techniques, all active practices based on effort can give you chitta shuddhi. So the purpose of every kind of practice or a spiritual discipline is only purity of mind. No spiritual discipline can give you liberation. That does not mean you don't need to do any spiritual discipline. You have to understand, I need the purity of mind obtained through one or many of the spiritual disciplines. I need that purity of mind for the sake of knowledge. But knowledge is something qualitatively of another category when compared to the effort-based disciplines. The knowledge does not lead you anywhere. You don't get anything by knowledge. You understand what is as it is through the process of listening and reflection. Then, now he is talking about the next one. Arjuna, those who partake the nectar that is left over after the yajna reach the eternal Brahman. For the one who does not perform yajna, nothing is gained in this world. How then can anything be gained in the other world? Now he is praising the importance of spiritual disciplines. Those whose life is based on yajna, whatever they enjoy only those which is the result of yajna. That means all the enjoyments are regulated by the discipline of yajna. So, if at all I enjoy something, what I enjoy is a result of yajna. If I live like that, I gradually purify my mind and attain Brahman in course of time. Through purification of the mind, by equipping myself as a fit student for knowledge, by equipping my mind for knowledge, by obtaining knowledge, I attain Brahman. So yajna takes me through the purification process and takes me to knowledge. But a person who does not follow any discipline, that person cannot obtain anything in this world, forget attaining the other world. That means you need punya. Yajna gives you punya. If you want to evolve spiritually, one has to undertake some kind of yajna, some kind of spiritual discipline in the spirit of yajna. Otherwise, spiritual evolution is not possible. That means you have to work for it. You cannot simply sit and expect one fine morning God decides to give you liberation and then you will get liberation. It will not work. One has to exert oneself through the process of yajna to remove all the impurities and evolve over a period of time in purity. And when the purity reaches a certain critical point, one will find oneself ready for knowledge. And by knowledge, there is liberation. So even if you want to gain different things like, I want a very elevated birth. Next birth must be, I must be born in a family of yogis. I must be exposed to spiritual teaching from the childhood onward. So if I want something like this, I have to work for it. I have to create punya. I have to do yajna for it. After death, I want to enjoy the heavenly pleasures. I have to do yajna for it. So, a person who does not do yajna does not enjoy even time-bound results. So, forget that person attaining the eternal Brahman. Because for attaining Brahman, you need the conditions of the mind which are obtained after phenomenal punya over millions of lives. So, only after obtaining the result of good karmas performed after millions of lives, when it crystallizes, one gets exposed to the teaching. And only by God's grace and phenomenal good karma, result of good karma, one will be able to actualize the self-knowledge as a living reality in one's everyday life. So, yajna is a very important precondition for jnana to take place. So, that is it talks about the importance of yajna. In this manner, many and varied religious disciplines are very elaborately mentioned in the words of the Veda. Understand them all to be born of karma. and therefore anatman. Knowing thus, you will be liberated. Now, the differentiation between karma and jnana is beginning. All the yajnas, no wonder they are important. They give you purity of mind, but understand them all to be of the nature of karma. By understanding this, you will be liberated. How? By understanding that they are all of the nature of karma, they give only a limited result. I will develop dispassion towards limited results. And I will not do those yajnas for the sake of result. I will do the yajnas only for the sake of self-purification. When I do like that, I become a qualified student for Vedanta. Then, by the exposure to the teaching, I will be liberated. So that is how it is to be understood. Arjuna, the discipline of knowledge is superior to the religious disciplines performed with materials. All action in its entirety gets resolved in knowledge. Knowledge is like, it is like doing a lot of things to make your life in the matrix comfortable. Jnana is something that takes you out of the matrix. So it is like makes you the owner of the matrix. Something like this. So jnana it's a quantum leap. It is another quantum state. They talk about two quantum states. So karma and everything belongs to one quantum plane, and jnana is a quantum leap. It's completely another category. So he said, all action in its entirety get resolved in knowledge. The discipline of knowledge is superior. Why? Because knowledge gives you the limitless. So it is superior to all the action-based yajnas which give you only limited results. Understand that. What is that? The true nature. Understand that which is to be known. By prostrating to the wise people, by asking them proper questions and by serving them. Those wise persons who have the vision of the truth will teach you this knowledge. Here he is using the same sentence which is used in Mundaka Upanishad. Tad vidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadeshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Jnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. Jnani means enlightened. Tattvadarshinaha also means enlightened. What does it mean? So here it means the one who knows and the one who is committed to the knowledge. Shrotriya Brahmanishta. The one who lives the knowledge. So may you find the Acharya. Acharyavam Purusho Vedaha. Don't try to get this knowledge from paperbacks. Don't try to get this knowledge by listening to Google or studying something, by Googling it. Don't Google Brahman. Go and find a guru. That's what he said. Yad jñatva na punarmohamevam yasyasi pandava yena bhutan yaseshena drakshasyatmanyathomayi. Gaining this knowledge which was taught by them, Pandava, you will not again be deluded in this manner, and by this knowledge you will see all beings in yourself and all beings in me. That means you will get the universal vision of the self as all that is. Api chedasi papebhyah sarvebhyah papakrittaman sarvam jnana plavenaiva vrijinam santarishyasi. Even if you are the worst sinner among all sinners, you will cross all the sins with ease by the mere raft of knowledge. You don't need somebody to die on the cross to save you. Then yathaidhamti samidho agnir basmasat krute arjuna jnanagnihi sarva karmani basmasat krute tatha. How you will be freed from all the bad karmas and good karmas and all the binding karmas in one stroke? Just like how a well-lighted fire reduces wood to ashes, so also the fire of knowledge, which is well maintained through dedication, reduces all actions and the results of actions to ashes. That means it destroys the seed of karma, which is the sense of doership. By destroying the sense of doership and enjoyership, sense of being a doer and an enjoyer, when that is destroyed, the karma cannot propagate itself because it is not backed by individuality. When karma and the result of karma, the pattern of karma, so it's as good as burning all the karmas into ashes. In this world, The usual analogy given is Seminte Prajit. Seminte Prajit will not give you new plant. Only fresh Seminte will give you new plant. So all the seeds of karma become Seminte Prajit if you are having knowledge. In this world, there is indeed no purifier equivalent to knowledge. The one who has in time attained preparedness through karma yoga naturally gains knowledge in the mind. The one who has faith in the scriptures, in the teaching and in the words of the teacher. The one who has faith in the body of teaching, Shastra, and in the words of the teacher. The one who is committed to that knowledge and the one who is master of one's own senses gains this knowledge. It is not a faith that is asking you to believe in something that is non-verifiable. Knowledge is something that is verifiable in this very life, and the result of knowledge, which is absolute liberation, which is unaffected by anything, is enjoyable in this very life. You can experience that liberation while you are alive, Jivan Mukti. So if that liberation, which is the true nature of yourself, if it cannot be experienced, what is the point of knowledge? So since it is a verifiable result, the Shraddha, the faith in the teaching and the teacher, is not a blind faith, but it is an intelligent faith pending discovery. It is like trusting your mom to take you to a candy shop. You catch her hand and go to the candy shop. Maybe she will take you to school to do homework, but after you do homework, at least she will take you to the candy shop. So you need to have that basic trust till the teacher shows you the truth. And you have to make yourself available for it and available for the teaching and give the benefit of doubt to the methodology. May you give the benefit of doubt to the methodology when it becomes too much to handle. And like that, patiently over a period of time, when the mind gets ready, the truth about your true nature will dawn on you. And then the next one. Having gained the knowledge, one immediately gains absolute peace. Why to gain this knowledge? You will gain absolute peace. Who doesn't want absolute peace and happiness? Everybody wants. The only way to get that is through knowledge. And the only way to get knowledge is through Shraddha. Shraddhavan labhate gnanam. The one who has no discrimination. Ajñascha ashraddadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati. Nayam loko asti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. The one who has no discrimination, the one who has no faith in the Shastra and the teacher. Shastra means the body of teaching. The one who has no faith in the body of teaching and the teacher, and the one who has a doubting mind perishes. Because for the one with a doubting mind, in this world is not there, nor the world beyond, nor happiness. A person who is fundamentally of a doubting mind will neither gain anything in this world, cannot enjoy this world because all the time he is doubting his own happiness, and cannot enjoy anything in the other world. Forget, if you cannot enjoy in this world, how you will enjoy the heavens, etc. And of course, you will not have lasting happiness. The next one. Actions do not bind the person who has renounced action through yoga of knowledge, whose doubts have been completely severed by knowledge, and the one who is together. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam Atmavantam na karmani vibadhanti dhananjaya. The one who has renounced action through yoga, either through karma yoga, where you offer the result of action to Ishvara, still you are, even in that case, you may not be enlightened, but still you are gradually liberated from karma. Actions don't bind you. And of course, if your doubts have been completely destroyed by the fire of knowledge, of course, karma doesn't bind you because you understand really what you are. And the one who is together means yukta, means the one who is completely available for this knowledge. The one who is not split personality, one who is completely committed to the knowledge, that person wins the result of knowledge. So the one-pointedness or the dedication to the purpose is required. Unless the person has gone through some kind of a discipline for any whatever reason it may be, if the person has subject oneself to discipline, the person will be a person together. So if the person is together, then the person is available for spiritual practices also. And the person is available for yoga also. And the person is available for jnana also. So you have to be, all your faculties should be together, devoted to a single direction. If that togetherness inside is not there, then the knowledge will not give its result. Because the commitment to knowledge will not be complete. So the person should be together is being emphasized. Therefore, Arjuna, slaying with the sword of knowledge this doubt about the self which is born of ignorance, which is rooted in the mind, get up and take to the yoga, get up and fight, which is your duty right now in the spirit of yoga. Thus ends the 4th chapter. This is the whole 4th chapter. We had a review today. I will introduce the 5th chapter and then we finish. 5th chapter, he asks a question. Krishna, you are praising renunciation. You say renunciation is great, renunciation is gives you the perfect knowledge, that person is not affected by anything and all that. And also you are praising Karma Yoga. You are praising Sankhya, you are praising Karma Yoga. Tell me definitely that which is the better of the two. Which is better? Because I am close to you, I am special for you. You should tell me only what is better. You are telling, this will also, you ask me how to go to this video, or I will put in an easier way. There is a nice temple on top of a mountain, a little hill is there. On top of the hill, we have a Venkateshwara temple in India, very famous temple. World's 2nd richest temple, after Vatican it is the richest temple. So Venkateshwara, Balaji temple is there in Tirupati. So Venkateshwara temple is there. There are 2 ways of going. There are a set of people who climb the temple by foot. They go by foot, they climb the hill, they take some vows and all that, and they go and see the Lord. There are those who take a taxi or a bus and then go by road. Road doesn't go like this. Road goes round, and then reaches. So he said, those who are capable of climbing the hill, take the hill. Those who are not capable of climbing, they take the road and go by automobile. Both of these reach to the Tirumala temple. And then I say, those who are climbing by the hill, they enjoy the scenery of the hill. They enjoy all those special spots which are given, which are there in the climbing route. Those who are going by the bus, they enjoy the sceneries and the great view that is there, and then they are not strained at all. They also those who are going by the automobile reach the Tirumala temple. Those who are climbing the hill reach the temple very quickly. Then I said, you are telling this is also going to Tirumala, that is also going to Tirumala temple. When both are leading to the same temple, please tell me which is better. Tell me which is better. You are telling the bus route is great, the bus journey was fantastic. We could see the waterfalls, we could see the 7 hills, we could see the cloud coming down and beautiful scenery. Oh, the climbing route is fantastic. We could see the special little temples on the way. We could meet so many sadhus. We could meet a lot of devotees. We had nice fun, sitting and having different kinds of snacks. When we are taking breaks, it was a lot of fun. So I am praising climbing route. I am praising automobile route. Then I am asking you, you are praising both. Tell me which is better. But right now, at least his doubt, one doubt is resolved. In the previous chapter, Arjuna thought renunciation gives you something. Karma Yoga gives you something. Renunciation gives me the highest. The renunciation followed by knowledge gives me the highest. And action is binding. Of course, action is terrible. I have to wage this war. I have to kill all my near and dear people. It's terrible. He says renunciation is great. Renunciation gives you knowledge. Knowledge gives you liberation. There is nothing great like renunciation. There is nothing great like knowledge. Liberation is the highest. So, do action. Then Arjuna got really, what is this? You say all that is great, and then you are telling me to do action. Then he explained, no. It is not simply renunciation. It is renunciation plus knowledge. So understand, when I say renunciation, I am not talking simply renouncing. I am not talking that renunciation that you are talking about. Dropping your bow and arrow and then going out of the battlefield and becoming a mendicant because you are scared to your bones to wage this war because you don't want to kill all those people. I am not talking about that renunciation. I am talking about something else. When I say renunciation, I mean knowledge, not simply giving up things. And when I mean action, I am not simply talking about the action of killing. I am talking about the action done with the attitude of yoga. Then he makes him understand what he is talking. Then that doubt of Arjuna is cleared. Okay. So both of them will lead to the same thing. It is not simply renouncing alone. It is not simply doing action alone. But it is doing action with the attitude of yoga and renouncing through knowledge. So that is the point here. He understood that. But now, these two choices are there with respect to the commitment. So should I obtain self-knowledge in the context of a renunciant way of life? Or should I obtain self-knowledge in the context of an active life lived in the spirit of yoga? You are telling both will lead to the same thing. Please tell me which is better. So then, Shri Bhagavan Vacha Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasakara Ubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasa Karma Yogo Vishishyate. By renunciation of action and performance of action as yoga lead, both renunciation of action and performance of action as yoga lead to liberation. But of these two, the performance of action as yoga is better than renunciation of action. Here, renunciation of action provides a context for you to devote completely to self-knowledge to the exclusion of every other pursuit. In Karma Yoga, your restless mind is given a chance to do a lot of things, but you are keeping in touch with the attitude of keeping in touch with the self-knowledge and with the attitude of yoga, so that you are not caught in the action, but the action becomes a purifying force. Then, why? Here comes the point, main point. The person who neither hates nor longs for anything should be known as always a renunciate. See, here is saying Karma Yoga is better. But also understand this. What is renunciation here? Jneyah sa nitya sannyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati nirtvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. A person who neither hates nor longs for anything should be known as always being a renunciate. Arjuna, the one who is free from opposites, likes and dislikes, is indeed effortlessly released from bondage. He said, Mr. Arjuna, what did you say? They are mine, I am theirs, I am completely overcome by the sorrow of having to kill them, having to wage this war. I don't want to wage this war. I will become a mendicant. I will leave or give all the kingdom to the bad guys and I will go away. I don't want to kill. I want to be a goody, non-violent person, and I don't know all this, clouded understanding, not knowing what is dharma. So he is telling, who is the renunciate? Renunciation is not simply leaving and going, sir. Renunciation is not being affected by likes and dislikes. The one who does not hate anything, not the one who does not hold to anything. Only that person is to be considered as a full-time renunciate. So renunciation is the spirit. Try to understand the spirit of renunciation. Don't be obsessed about the renunciant lifestyle. Renunciant lifestyle is not the main point. The main point is the renunciant attitude. The renunciant, see, that does not mean renunciant lifestyle should not be used. I will come to that. The person who neither hates nor longs for anything should be known as a full-time renunciate. He is always a renunciate, no matter what the person is doing. Arjuna, the one who is free from the likes and dislikes and the different pairs of opposites is indeed effortlessly released from bondage. So understand, what is required for freedom from bondage is not any specific way of life, but what is required for freedom from bondage is the attitude is the spirit of detachment, where you are free from likes and dislikes, where you are not affected by the pairs of opposites. That equanimity is what liberates you, not any specific way of life. That is the point of it. Then the next one. The children, those childish people who do not know but not the wise people. These people who do not know, they are the ones who argue that knowledge and karma yoga are different, but not the wise people. The person who follows even one of the two properly gains the result of both. A person, see, only the childish people who have really not understood what it really means, only they think living an active life and living a renunciant life, both are different. It's not the point. No, the real thing is, no matter what you follow, if you follow an active life lived in the spirit of yoga, or you follow a renunciant life devoted to study, both of these will lead to the same result of enlightenment only. The wise people recognize this. Only the ignorant, childish people who don't understand the spirit behind the teaching, they think both are different. It is not like that. Both of these commitments can lead you two kinds of commitments. Commitment to the attitude of yoga when active life is your calling. Commitment to the spirit of renunciation in a renunciant context of life and complete devotion to the knowledge if your calling is renunciant life. But no matter what is your commitment, both of these will lead to the same result. This is the understanding of the wise people. Now, the end. Yet sankhyaihi prapyate sthanam tad yogairapi gamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yah pashyati sa pashyati. The result of moksha, liberation, that is gained by the renunciants is also reached by the karma yogis. That means through the process of purification and becoming qualified for knowledge and attaining knowledge, the karma yoga provides the commitment necessary for knowledge, and by gaining knowledge they attain moksha. See, moksha, liberation is knowledge only. But the knowledge can also happen for a karma yogi as it happens for a jnana, for a sannyasi. So knowledge is not the exclusive property of a sannyasi. Knowledge can also happen for a karma yogi. Provided he is devoted to the spirit of yoga, the mind will be purified and the knowledge will happen. So that's why he is saying, moksha, which is knowledge, is gained also by the renunciants. It is also reached by the karma yogis. The one who sees knowledge and karma yoga as one, that person alone sees the truth. Knowledge and karma yoga as one means the one who sees the knowledge and the sannyasa and karma yoga lead to the same result. That person sees. They are one with respect to the purpose. Both are the same with respect to the result. Both climbing the hill and going by the automobile, both lead to the same temple. That person sees. So don't worry which one. If you are not able to climb, why are you bothered about people who are climbing? You have an automobile, go by the automobile. Doesn't matter. You all reach the same temple. That fellow wants to climb. His temperament is more suited for climbing. He is climbing. You have arthritis in your knee and you cannot climb. You want to climb. I also want to climb. So you will have knee pain. And when you reach the Lord, the temple, you will not be able to enjoy the darshan in the temple. You will be complaining of knee pain. No? So, to think that sannyasa or renunciation is something great than karma yoga, it's only those who don't understand, they see this. Of course, sannyasa is greater than karma yoga. Shankaracharya will say in the commentary, sannyasa is greater than karma yoga, but with respect to the purpose of moksha, karma yoga can also lead you to moksha. If you are not suitable for sannyasa and you take sannyasa, it becomes counterproductive. So one has to understand one's own calling when choosing the type of commitment. That is the point. So may you choose the commitment that is appropriate for you, and don't poke in your nose in something else with a fanciful mind, because there is nothing that you will not lose by being in this. So this is what he is telling for Arjuna, because for Arjuna, karma yoga is more appropriate. That person alone sees that knowledge and karma yoga are one. They lead to the same result. Now he is coming to the main point. Why I am telling you all this, and also understand this. Renunciation of action, Arjuna, is very difficult to accomplish without Karma Yoga. If you find somebody is able to renounce and go when they are 8 years, 10 years old. This Swami Shankaracharya became a pontiff when he was 14 years old. From 14 years till 100 years, he was a sannyasi, perfect sannyasi, with all the austerities and everything. Now, I am talking about sannyasa for 15 years, still I am not able to take sannyasa. It doesn't matter. Let me be devoted to Karma Yoga. No, this is what he is saying. So, sannyasa is very difficult. So when a person is able to take to the life of renunciation in a very young age, directly from the student life, directly jumping to the life of renunciation, that means they have acquired the required preparedness from the past life. They have done a lot of Karma Yoga in the past life, like Ramana Maharshi, who left his too much headache. You do one thing, you go to that room, Christina, in that room there is a small bottle, bring that. Yes, sannyasa, renunciation is very difficult to accomplish without Karma Yoga. Yeah, so take some 2-3 drops and apply. Like a perfume, just take. No, it will fall like this. Like this. And renunciation of action is very difficult to accomplish without Karma Yoga. Whereas the one who is committed to the life of Karma Yoga and is capable of reasoning gains Brahman quickly. Yoga yukto munir Brahma nachirena adhikachati. See, renunciation as a way of life cannot be accomplished without going through the process of preparation in Karma Yoga. So without Karma Yoga, you cannot achieve sannyasa. That means you will renounce everything, but you will be struggling and you will not be able to maintain the way of life. You will not be able to maintain the commitment of a sannyasa. Your mind will be all over the place. So instead of forcing yourself into renunciation and pushing yourself and struggling there when you are not prepared, instead, if you take to an active life in the spirit of Karma Yoga and you apply your renunciation and you apply your attitude of yoga across every life situation, instead of pushing you to a life of renunciation, may you apply the attitude of yoga in every aspect of life while you are living your life according to Dharma, means devoting to Karma Yoga. And Yoga Yukta means may your intellect be devoted to the attitude of yoga. Means the method of yoga. Offering the results of action to the Lord, not considering yourself as the agent of the action. So applying the knowledge in the action. Doing action with the background knowledge of Ishvara. Ishvara Arpita Buddhi. So when you do like this, very quickly, such a person gains Brahman quickly. Means you will, instead of going through the struggle, if you take sannyasa without preparation, you will be wasting your time struggling. If you are not prepared enough, and then you go and you want to meditate in a cave. I remember, I was having a big fancy because Ramana Maharshi meditated in cave. I wanted to meditate in cave. So first time when I went to the cave, instead of meditating, I was only hitting mosquitoes. Hundreds of mosquitoes. But what meditation? Then I said, okay, let me put my fan and stay under the fan in my room and meditate. Meditation was much better. So if I am not ready, if I cannot forget my body and go into samadhi, what is the point of going to a mosquito infested cave? Ramana Maharshi went there. When they found him after 1 year, maggots were going through his skin. They had to take out the insects and everything. And then he was like this, absolutely untouched by anything. So that person can go into the cave. Not a person who is used to city life. You are in the bed and you have a fan and you have AC and all that. You go to the cave, what happens? You will be only hitting mosquitoes. Mosquito meditation. So he says sannyasa, instead of taking sannyasa and then biting your teeth and sitting on thorns, you will be wasting your life. Instead of that, you understand what you are qualified for. If your mind is very active temperament, no problem. live your life, active life, but be devoted to the spirit of yoga. That way you will gain the purity of mind that is required for knowledge. And when the purity of mind is gained through Karma Yoga, you will get the knowledge of Brahman very quickly. Instead of, if you take the commitment that is not suitable for you, it may take a very long time. But if you take the commitment that is suitable for you, you can get the same result very quickly. So it is not whether sannyasa is more effective or Karma Yoga is more effective. For a given person, one approach will be more effective and than the other, depending on the nature of the person. So by understanding oneself, one should decide, what am I cut out for? If you are having this doubt, you think I can renounce, then what will happen to this? If I renounce, then what will happen to that? If you think like that, you are not fit to renounce. There is a story, with this I will finish. In a village, one person was telling, I think all this life is boring, all this life is, everything is Maya, it's all bondage. I will renounce and go. I am going to take sannyasa. I am going to renounce everything and become a mendicant. And then this man, who has lived through family life and everything, and he is a very mature man, middle-aged man. Sir, this is not how you renounce. If you keep telling like this, you will not renounce. This is not the way to renounce. What? If this is not the way to renounce, then how to renounce? Like this. He took the towel, took it like this, put on his shoulder and went. That is called renunciation. If the mind is ready, you don't keep talking. And you don't need to renounce. This fellow was ready to renounce. He had all the readiness, but he was living in his house because it does not matter. So what is the big deal? A mature person, whether he is in the middle of a family, or he is in the middle of a parliament, or he is in the middle of a forest doing penance, it's all the same. But if the person is not mature, one should understand what one is cut out for and go through that process of purification. Then when one becomes mature, one is renouncing or not will not matter. When it does not matter, then you get renounced. So this is to be understood. So renunciation is very difficult to accomplish without Karma Yoga. If you see somebody who has renounced and is able to attain perfection through renunciation, like Ramana Maharshi for example, that means they have attained the purity required, the preparation that is required, already they have attained it from past lives, so it kicks in this life. They are born with the maturity, otherwise it is not easy. So if you go through the process of Karma Yoga, probably next life you will be able to renounce, or even without that, in this life itself, you may obtain the purity required to imbibe self-knowledge. So that is the teaching. And further, the other things we will see in the next class. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, nrityorma gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.